After drugs, humans are the second most trafficked item in the world. Human trafficking is a fact of daily life in Tampa Bay, and this is all happening right in your own backyard. Who would ever have guessed such ugliness could live alongside such beauty?
Tuve una niña cuando tenía 15 años y vivíamos con mi abuela en mi país. Nos costó mucho trabajo encontrar dinero para vivir, así que hace 2 años tuve la oportunidad de venir a los Estados Unidos a trabajar limpiando casas para un hombre. Él me iba a pagar $10 la hora. Estábamos desesperados, así que yo vine. El primer día en los Estados Unidos, él me compró ropa y me dijo que tenía que acostarme con unos hombres. Fueron 25 hombres al día. Vivíamos en un cuartico bien pequeño. Nos podías escuchar llorando hasta que nos quedábamos dormidas.
Experts estimate 300,000 children are sexually exploited every year. Some are even being sold as sex slaves on the internet. It is a crime against young women that's barely reported. Before she left on maternity leave, Natalie Morales filed this report on one teenager's harrowing story, a warning it is very tough to watch.
It's a story that begins in small-town USA with the girl next door.
I always figured that something like that could never happen to me because I was safe. I was always careful.
At 16, Shauna Newell had heard the stories of the thousands of young foreign women being tricked into modern-day sexual slavery.
I always thought that stuff like that only happened to people who were like putting themselves in that position, in that predicament, you know, like girls who were floozies and girls who just took life for granted, and I wasn't that kind of person, you know. I dressed respectably, I never showed my body off ever.
But this Florida teenager's life took a terrifying turn when she was trafficked by the most unlikely criminal, a fellow 16-year-old girl.
She was a really good friend.
Shauna says that girl, a 16-year-old we'll call Kathy, worked hard to gain Shauna's trust, and within months, a deep friendship was born. Shauna spent weeks lobbying her mother for permission to spend the night at Kathy's house.
And Shauna's just begging me, so I finally give in.
Her dad took us to this house and said he'd be right back, and he left us there, and I asked for some water because I was thirsty, and I drank the water and I blacked out.
When Shauna woke up, she felt groggy and couldn't move.
My legs were being held down. The guy that was raping me was holding my hands back. Like, I kept screaming, "Stop, please don't do this, leave me alone." But I was so weak I couldn't fight him off. Like, I was still really out of it, and I blacked out a few times and I kept coming back to, and I was still being raped every time I woke up.
At home, her mother started to worry.
My cell phone rang, and all I heard was, "Mommy, help me," and the phone went dead. And I freaked.
After receiving a frantic phone call from her daughter, Shauna's mother, Lisa, called police. She says they told her not to worry and tried to convince her Shauna had run away.
And he's like, "Oh, well, you know, there's nothing I can do, you know, teenagers." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. I know my children."
Shauna endured 3 days of being drugged, raped, and tortured. And according to rescuers,
Shauna had been sold on the internet for $300,000.
In a twist of fate, the volunteer search party looking for the 16-year-old rescued her when her captors stopped for gas while trying to flee the state.
Her eyes were black and blue, her mouth was bloody, her nose was bloody, her throat had handprints all over it.
In the 2 years since the abduction, no one has ever been arrested or prosecuted for the kidnapping, gang rape, and torture of Shauna Newell. Today, under the watchful guard of her family, Shauna warns other girls about how easy it is to be kidnapped and trafficked. Her mission? To save other girls from a similar fate.
To this day, I'm still scared to go out. Like, I went to the beach a few weeks ago, and I saw the dude who raped me, and he just looked at me like Like, hey, you know, I mean, you ruined my whole life. You have scarred me for the rest of my life, and you're just sitting there going on with your life like nothing is wrong.
These girls were victims of something hard to believe, something you might never expect, something that happened in plain sight. You are looking at girls who were held as slaves in America, not for a week or a month, but for years.
Can you tell us about what it was like having someone else control all of your movements, everything you did?
It was like being, you know, being trapped, you know, being in a cage. It's horrible. You know, like sometimes it's not enough food for us to eat. No freedom at all.
Nicole and Zena and another 20 girls like them were brought to the U.S. from their homes in the West African nations of Ghana and Togo nearly a decade ago. Barely teens, promised an American education. They were instead enslaved in Newark, New Jersey. The girls were forced to work in hair braiding salons, serving customers all day, right out in the open. Their captors took all the money the girls earned, every penny.
How many days a week were you working?
7 days a week.
How many hours a day?
Sometimes 14 hours.
This went on for 5 to 6 years. Traffickers held the girls in several houses in Newark and East Orange. The traffickers no longer live there. Who would commit such a crime? These are the traffickers. Akawavi Afolabi, the wife, was the ringleader. Lasisi, the husband, and Derek, the son, were accomplices, according to court documents and law enforcement. Why did they do it? Money. Pure and simple. They made about $4 million off the girls. A Newark court recently sentenced Akawavi Afolabi to 27 years in prison. The father got 24 years, and the son, 4.5 years.
But after all the promises she promised me, and then when I got here, all my life was messed up. No, and I always tell her, if I knew this is how my life was gonna be, I'll never come. I'll never let her take me.
Zena took me on a walk where the girls used to walk every morning to work. From the house to the hair salon down the street. Slave girls walking in plain sight of an entire community.
I always thought of running, but I ain't know nobody, and I didn't know where to go.
Finally, after 5 years, a tip came to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
These girls were shielded from the outside world, virtually hidden in plain sight.
After months of surveillance, ICE agents raided the houses. Inside, they found the girls, mattresses on the floor, and filthy conditions. The traffickers had hidden bags of cash and the girls' passports. Something else the agents found? A notebook the girls used to track the tips they received at the hair salon. Ironically, on the cover of that notebook, a picture of the Statue of Liberty. After so much pain, the girls, now young women, were free.
It was a good day because, you know, it helped my life. I was so happy that I was out from the jail.